April 1912. The world was entering a new age of technology and innovation, and at the center of that excitement stood the largest passenger ship ever built. Her name was Titanic. People called her the unsinkable ship. She was a masterpiece of engineering, luxurious, powerful, and unlike anything the world had ever seen. No one imagined that just days after her maiden voyage, she would become part of one of history's greatest tragedies. This is the story of Titanic's final 2 hours and 40 minutes. The Titanic was more than just a ship. She was a symbol of human achievement. Measuring nearly 269 meters in length, she was the largest moving object ever built by mankind at that time. Inside were elegant dining rooms, a swimming pool, a gymnasium, and one of the most famous staircases in history. First-class passengers enjoyed a level of luxury that rivaled the finest hotels in Europe. On board were wealthy businessmen, aristocrats, immigrants seeking a better future, and families traveling together. More than 2,200 passengers and crew members were aboard. On April 10, 1912, Titanic departed from Southampton, England. Crowds gathered at the harbour to witness the beginning of a historic journey. No one knew it would also be the last. 4 days later, on April 14th, Titanic was crossing the North Atlantic Ocean. The sea was unusually calm, but hidden in the darkness ahead were enormous icebergs drifting south from Greenland.
Heavy icebergs ahead. Strongly advise you to slow down.
This vessel is a masterpiece. We have nothing to fear. Maintain current speed.
Throughout the day, several nearby ships sent warnings about ice in the area. The messages reached Titanic's wireless operators. However, the ship continued at nearly full speed. Many believed Titanic was capable of handling almost any challenge the ocean could present. Confidence was high, perhaps too high.
It's an iceberg. It's the front.
At 11:40 p.m., everything changed. A lookout stationed high above the deck suddenly spotted an iceberg directly ahead. He immediately rang the warning bell 3 times. Then he picked up the telephone and delivered a message that would become famous around the world. "Iceberg right ahead." The bridge responded instantly. The crew attempted to turn the ship and slow the engines. But the Titanic was simply too large. Within seconds, the iceberg scraped along the starboard side of the ship. At first, the impact seemed minor. Many passengers barely noticed anything at all. Some even continued their conversations as if nothing had happened. Yet below the surface, disaster had already begun. The iceberg had opened several sections of the hull to the freezing Atlantic Ocean. Water rushed into the ship, and it was rising fast. Titanic had been designed with watertight compartments. The ship could survive if up to 4 compartments flooded, but this time 5 compartments had been breached. The damage was beyond what the designers had imagined.
The water will breach these 5 compartments.
But that's impossible!
The ship will sink.
Thomas Andrews, the ship's chief designer, inspected the damage personally. After calculating the situation, he delivered a devastating conclusion: the Titanic would sink. It was only a matter of time. Shortly after midnight, crew members began preparing the lifeboats. Passengers were instructed to put on life jackets and move toward the upper decks. Yet many people still did not believe the ship was in serious danger. The lights remained on.
This is surely just a precaution. Look how stable everything is.
The ship still appeared stable, some passengers were reluctant to leave the warmth and comfort of the ship for small lifeboats sitting in the freezing night air. Unfortunately, there was another problem. There were not enough lifeboats for everyone on board. At the time, Titanic carried the number of lifeboats required by maritime regulations, but those regulations had not kept pace with the size of modern ships. The result was tragic.
I'll see you soon. Honey, I love you.
Captain, the water is rail room. Women and children first. Move toward the lifeboats. I must get on this boat. Let me through. Stand back. Women and children first.
Stand back there!
Women and children were given priority. Families were separated. Difficult decisions had to be made. And time was running out. As the hours passed, the bow of the ship sank deeper into the ocean. The angle of the deck became more noticeable. Now the reality could no longer be ignored. Fear spread throughout the ship. Passengers rushed toward the remaining lifeboats. Crew members worked desperately to maintain order. Amid the chaos, stories of extraordinary courage emerged. Some passengers gave up their seats for others. Crew members continued helping people board lifeboats, even when they knew their own chances of survival were fading. The ship's musicians famously continued playing music. Their goal was simple: to bring comfort to frightened passengers during the darkest moments of the night. By 2:00 a.m., the situation had become hopeless. The front of the ship was almost completely underwater. The stern rose high into the air. Then came the final moments. With tremendous force, the ship broke apart. Thousands of tons of steel were torn in two. People were thrown into the freezing Atlantic Ocean. The water temperature was near freezing. For many, survival lasted. 2:20 a.m. The Titanic completely disappeared into the sea. It happened in just 2 hours and 40 minutes. Of the approximately 2,200 people on board, about 1,500 lost their lives. It was the moment that became the most famous maritime disaster in human history. Rescue ships arrived at the scene a few hours later, but much time had already passed. The survivors never forgot that night for the rest of their lives, and the world felt the same way. Following the Titanic disaster, international maritime safety regulations were significantly strengthened. Lifeboat regulations were changed, and iceberg monitoring systems were improved. Although there were countless sacrifices, those sacrifices became the catalyst that changed the safety of the seas thereafter. This was the Titanic episode, the tragic moment that changed the world.